You may have been awaiting this. It's not actually hit screens yet, but there's been a debate in advance of it. More than 23,000 people have signed a petition urging ITV to cancel a storyline in Emmerdale in which a couple terminate a pregnancy after a Down syndrome diagnosis. It's been called irresponsible, ignorant, prejudiced by campaigners, but producers have defended the storyline, saying it's been thoroughly researched and it's been done in a sensitive way. The episode is due to be broadcast on the 30th of November and shows the characters Laurel and Jai agonising over what to do. We're joined now by Lynn Murray, a spokesperson for Don't Screen Us Out. That's the campaign seeking to reform NIPT, non-invasive prenatal testing. The test is projected to result in a profound reduction in the number of children born with Down syndrome. And John Whitson, Managing Director of Continuing Drama at ITV. Welcome to you both. Lynn, let me start with you. What is your connection to this storyline and what's your issue with it?
Well, I suppose going way back, I have a daughter who's 20 years old who has Down syndrome. And 5 years ago, I got involved in the Don't Screen Us Out campaign because I felt that the way screening was being carried out was problematic. And we've been working for 5 years with all sorts of people, including Department of Health, to try and improve things. My objection to this is that while it may be a story that happens, I'm not so sure the story is going to portray how it often happens. And I think the story today about how screening is carried out and how women are often coerced otherwise to go and have an
Lynn,
abortion.
I'm so sorry. I wouldn't normally do this, but I can't hear you properly. We're going to just see if we can improve your line. We started to get a gist of your issue with the storyline. While we do that, let me just go over to John to bring him in. Good morning.
Hi.
There's huge emotion about this, as you can already start to hear from Lynn, people with children who have Down syndrome. Why did you choose to do this?
It is a hugely emotive subject. About 9 years ago, we did exactly the same subject, but with a different outcome, where we showed two parents getting a prenatal diagnosis of Downs and deciding to go ahead with the pregnancy, having Leo, who's a character in our show and has been for 9 years. And we felt that actually there was another side to this story. And interestingly, since the campaign against the story, I've had so many letters from people who've been deeply affected by it, people who have taken the decision and feel that by taking that decision that they've had to do so in secrecy and that there is shame and stigma around the decision that they've taken to not progress with a pregnancy. And that's what happens in this story. It's about people being allowed to take that decision, which is a terrible decision for any parent to have to make. But to make it themselves, but then to be able to talk to family and friends about it in a supportive way, which at the moment, I think, the point that these letters were making to me was that by trying to silence this story, which a number of people are trying to do, and by getting petitions up on social media, they're actually doing the same as society sometimes is doing to these parents, which is saying that they have to suffer in silence. They've taken their decision. They shouldn't be allowed to talk about that decision. And these are people who are feeling huge grief and huge upset because it's the most momentous decision of their life that they've taken, and they're aware of that. But they've taken it for perfectly valid reasons that are legal, legitimate, and also strongly held and emotional.
Lynn, I'm not sure how much of that you could hear, but just to bring you back into this, John's made the point that he's received letters from people who have taken this decision and they also want their side of this and their story to be reflected.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree that all the parties in screening get a pretty rough deal, and I think that the Department of Health has a duty towards women who have gone on to abort. You know, if these women are feeling like this, then, you know, we need to be looking at why they're feeling like that. And I think that's fine if Emmerdale feels there's an issue there, but I think they should have done more research, contacted people like ourselves, who, you know, if they had done a Google search, we would have popped up because we're concerned about the 90% termination rate. We're worried that women are being coerced into this, misadvised, etc. Because, you know, research carried out in Scotland last year told us that the women that the researchers spoke to, and this was carried out for Public Health Scotland, knew very little about Down syndrome. Now, that's pretty worrying, and that's something that needs to be addressed from the get-go. So I feel there's so many problems inherent in screening that if we're going to just put a story up there, it has to be one that's fully researched and does not cause harm to people. And there are people with Down syndrome who are offended by the storyline.
It's very interesting, if I may come in there. I mean, I don't disagree with what Lynn is saying in terms of the screening process. Maybe it does need reform, maybe it doesn't. That's not my area of expertise. What I do know is that some of these letters that are coming in from people are saying that one of the arguments that is made is that they haven't taken these decisions in an informed way, that they've been somehow coerced into them by the medical profession or by interest groups. And they sort of say, well, actually, that's incredibly insulting to us because this is the most difficult decision of our entire life. And to say that we haven't researched it, that we haven't looked at all the, the life of a Downs kid, that they haven't kind of thought through all the advances in medicine that mean that people with Down's syndrome have a much longer life expectancy and a better life expectancy. But they take these decisions for very valid reasons. I myself grew up with a sister with Down's and lived with 20 years. I mean, my parents, who were old when they had her, had my sister, were fearful of what would happen to her after they died. It was a fear that hung over them for a long time. And that's one reason why some people take those decisions. But it's not for us to judge how they take those decisions, but I think it is for us to be allowed to show people going through that, taking those decisions for perfectly valid reasons. And I don't see why we should be silenced in doing that. Emmerdale's got a long tradition of dealing with difficult subjects and dealing with them sensitively and accurately. And in terms of research...
answer that point about research, and I'll go back to Lynn. Go on, John.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
In terms of research, with you, Emma, we don't go around canvassing whether we should do a story. We decide to do a story. There's 40 highly intelligent, highly sensitive, highly experienced people sitting around the room, the writers and the writing team and the editorial team, and we debate these things thoroughly from a position of knowledge, and everyone brings their own knowledge, having researched these things. And then we go out to research to make sure that we get the details of the story right, so that we make sure that we talk to medical professions, we talk to people who've taken this decision, we talk to parents of people with Downs, and we talk to organisations involved in this.
Okay, let's
get the detail right.
Let me get this back to Lynn then. Lynn, you've just heard a fulsome explanation from John. What is the issue then with showing this, with that experience that people have? If they haven't been coerced, if they've taken this decision and it's not an issue around screening, is it that you're not talking about something slightly separate to this?
Well, I think this is John is telling us that we don't have any proof of that the majority of women have a free choice, because we in fact know that many women don't take informed choices around screening. And I think it's very noble.
There will be some that do, Lynn, won't there?
Yes, and I think that's very noble that John has decided, or the Emmerdale team, ITV, has decided to take this on. But they also, in their research, have to think about the minority group that's mentioned in the storyline. And no consideration was taken of them. Parents of people with Down syndrome are not people with Down syndrome. And, if they had gone to an organisation that was concerned with Down syndrome, they might have had a more balanced approach to deciding what story to do. So it's about how people are hurt that have Down syndrome.
I would argue that the soaps, both the soaps, I'm also responsible for Coronation Street, which also has a Down syndrome character in it. And I would say that the soaps have done a great deal to portray a very positive outcome for people with Down's syndrome. And we've got two characters, one in each of our soaps, who do just that. So in terms of saying that we don't value the lives of Down's people, that is entirely not true, and it's an accusation that I've been called a Nazi, I've been called a eugenicist, I've been called a lot of things, and the story hasn't even been out yet. It's there is a strong lobby trying to silence stories that take a different view from people's own views. Now, our story doesn't take a view. It's not about whether it's right or wrong. It's about the choice. It's about the difficulty of choice for parents. And I think that's something that deserves to be examined properly.
Lynn, does that go any way to calming your concerns, what John has said?
No, I mean, we haven't accused ITV of anything, untoward. What we're saying is that people with Down syndrome have expressed their hurt, their anger, their upset. And that's the problem that ITV have. They didn't think about that, and that should be part of the research.
May I? I'm not trying to unduly interrupt, but where John just mentioned other characters, a storyline before which has gone the other way on this, and having characters in the actual soaps, does that not do any of the work that you're talking about?
No, because what happens is you tend to. You're sort of reinforcing this stereotype about Down syndrome pregnancy, and all the sort of, the mother might suffer, the child might suffer, the siblings might suffer, whilst we know in reality that's not the case. So it's really, it hasn't gone any way for people with Down syndrome to help them. So the answer to that is no, it hasn't.
But why should only one view of the world be shown then?
It's not one view of the world, but I don't make the policies. ITV have social responsibilities. They have policies around diversity, and that's what they should be looking to. It's 2020. We have to be getting a different narrative around Down syndrome.
Yes, and I agree with that. It is 2020, and I think that narrative has to include the voices of people who've taken a different decision. Now, that may not be a decision that you agree with. It may not be a decision that I agree with. That's not what the programme is about. The programme is about people's right to take that decision and to take that decision openly. I mean, people often, when they take that decision, they don't tell people about it. They say they've had a miscarriage because there is, at the moment, a degree of stigma and shame about taking that decision. And that's what this story looks at.
Lynn, final word? Is there something you want to say? I suppose I'm always interested if we bring these conversations together, if any views change.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's about me and I don't think it's about John. It's about people with Down syndrome and how they feel.
All right, well, if anyone's listening who has Down syndrome, of course, and wants to get in touch, of course, this hasn't been out yet, we should say, but this is the debate, 85058. Lynn Murray, thank you for your time. John Whitson, thank you to you. John, just a final word. It is still going out? There's no change of play on this? OK, I'll just sort of confirm that on the news side of things. John Whitson of ITV, Lynn Murray of Don't Screen Us Out. And their views very clear there. 85058, where do you come in on this? Do let us know. Coming